Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jung-Sam. I'm from Seoul, Korea, Humanities Institute, Seoul National University. And today my subject is focusing on the kinds of translation in 16th and around the 17th century when Chinese characters were understood by the Western people, especially on Jesuit missionary, because the Jesuit missionary is the first people to understand Chinese characters or Chinese classics, and then they translated the classics into European society. So this is the man, as you know, Matteo Ricci. And his English name is Matteo. When it comes to the first meeting between the Chinese text and the Western thought, we have to consider the activity of Jesuits. For the purpose of making Chinese peoples converting to the Christianity. So the missionaries' goal is and the Jesuits commit themselves to studying Chinese language and thought. For example, Japanese Jesuit Rodriguez, he wrote the book of the Western grammars of Japanese. But their effort to studying Chinese characters, the task was hard work. Chinese characters is quite different from the European letters. There was no alphabet, but as many letters as there are words. So desperately, the Jesuits, they tried to find find a way memorize so many Chinese characters. However, to the Jesuits, the Chinese language is more the language of birds than of man. It's quite different language. So the man, Matteo Ricci, before he came to China, another Jesuit, Ricci, had to begin his studies in what he called the ridiculous manner. When he first started studying Chinese characters, he learned from Chinese teacher through pictures. For example, when it comes to know about the horse, draw a picture of a horse, and then draw a character horse, and then he learned to sound ma. But the very talented man, Matteo Ricci, has a very incredible memory to memorize the Chinese characters. So he showed the way how to know the meaning and know the pronunciation of Chinese characters to the Chinese literati. Chinese people were astonished by his ability. Ability. So when Ricci showed his ability of memorizing the Chinese characters forward and backward in front of the Chinese scholars, he was asked to teach a Chinese literati's son the art of memory to make him pass the exam for government official. So Matteo Ricci wanted to show off his memory and the Western traditional art of memory. So he decided to write this book. It's Xiguojifa, translated as Art of Memory in Western Countries. This book, Xiguojifa, was written by Matteo Ricci in 1595 This book consists of 6 chapters. 文本篇、民咏篇、还有社为篇、立乡篇、定式篇、广资篇。When it comes to the ability of memory or memorizing the things or words, we have to talk about the Western tradition. Because an immense weight of history in Western tradition presses on the memory section of the text Rhetorica ad Herennium around in BC 90. The book, the Rhetorica ad Herennium, was a well-known and much used text in the Middle Ages. The art of memory in the Western tradition must refer back consistently to this text as the main source of the tradition. So every art of memory, as memorativa, treatise with these rules for places, its rules for images, its discussion of memory for things and memory for words. So this is the book, 文本篇, the contents. So according to this Western tradition of art of memory, the Xiguojifa also repeated same theory in this book. So you see in the first line, they explain that memory is the human intellectual ability which was bestowed by God and is quite different from that of animals. So it's the own ability of human beings. And then Rhetorica ad Herennium, art of memory, makes the rules for the distributing or making places in your brain, and then every places you distribute the words or words of images. So the artificial memory is established from places and images. We call this is Jung-Sam, like this. Yeah, Jung-Sam means the method of memorizing the image. And let me explain the way how can you memorize the words and then places. At first, before memorize the words, we should make places first. For example, you in your head, in your imagination, you make one room and 4 corners. So it explains that kind of process. 4 corners is east-west or east-west. East-south, and then east-north, and west-north, and west-south. And then you distribute that each word in each corner. So let me explain just one example. In the one room, you can place this letter U. This is it's placed in the eastern south area, and then you make the image like a brave man wearing a battling suit, and then holding the weapons, and then holding one man and obstacling it. That kind of image you can make it. And another example is also Matteo Ricci introduced the 반체파. It's a kind of pronunciation in traditional way, but it's combining the two letters. Which was represent the beginning sound and then ending sound. Actually, the way devised it only for the pronunciations themselves, even in traditional China. But Matteo Ricci tried to explain the meaning of characters used in 반체파. So, for example, you just see just one word. This sound is 랑, and then he explained that 人手羊身, human head, and then body of goat. So you take the beginning sound R and then ending sound ang, and then you make this word sound 랑. However, the Matteo Ricci explained its meaning. And another example in Xiguojifa is a phrase. It's a phrase, it's a famous example is in Lunui, in Analogues. It's the first phrase, 学而时习之，不亦乐乎. The Matteo Ricci explained character by character. You just see just one example. It's a kind of conjunction particle er. He explains it's kind of an image of folk. And then the negative particle spu, he explains one man holding a tree and then cut the heading part. It's that kind of, Matteo Ricci explains that kind of imagine, you use that kind of image. Let's see another example. That is a phrase as a whole image. It's not character by character, it's a whole image. It's from the Zhongyong, it's the famous Chinese classics. He wanted to explain this Zhun De Xing, the three characters. And he explained that in the middle is a virtuous man, and then right hand holding the binary pot, and right hand holding the blooding heart. And then you imagine the picture through this phrase. This is the example of shown in the Xiguojifa. But unfortunately, this kind of nonsense and absurdity could not able to make the Jesuits convinced by Chinese scholars, as well as for them to study Chinese character effectively. Just show off, display of their ability of memorizing the Chinese characters. Eventually, I think this effort was not successful at all. So we have to consider another effort to understand Chinese characters is attempted by Matteo Ricci, like a Jesuit. The other effort to memorize the Chinese characters for the Jesuit is the attempt at the same time with Xiguojifa. It's another text written by Matteo Ricci. Xiguojifa is wonders of Western letters. It's a very different way compared with the Xiguojifa. They make phonetic way. They combine Chinese characters and Romanized pronunciation. They combined with it. In this book, Matteo Ricci tries to combine Chinese characters and Romanized letters. And in this book, Matteo Ricci explained the stories in the Bible. It consists of 3 chapters I'll explain the contents briefly. The first one is, with the belief of God, we can walk on the sea. If you distrust, you would be drowned. That's the first chapter 1, the contents of chapter 1. And then chapter 2, after two apostles came to know the real truth and throw away vacant theory. And then chapter 3 is frivolities and capriciousness quicken the anger of heaven. But before going to the next page, you have to memorize the pronunciation of these Chinese characters. 信而不还，二图文时，遥色晦气。Let's see the pictures. The pictures in this part is Romanized Chinese pronunciation for the first time in the history of Western translation into European society. Also, even in China, is the first time to be Romanized. 信而不还. And then the next one, 而图文时. And the next one, 要色晦气. That is the first Romanized text. And then another picture is Mother Maria and then holding the baby Christ. And then now we are focusing on another work, was compiling a dictionary. Actually, it's the first dictionary written by Western people is Portuguese Chinese dictionary. It's around 1583 until 1586. It was written by Matteo Ricci and Michele Ruggeri, and another scholar, he is very talented with music and sound, is Lazzaro Cattaneo. And then this dictionary is compiling Portuguese words and Chinese characters and their Romanizations. This is the Portuguese and the Chinese, and then the Romanized pronunciation. After their effort of Romanization of Chinese characters, Nicolas Trigo, another Jesuit, made this book, 悉如而字幕, the aid to seeing and hearing of Western scholars. Is they could develop system of sounds, vowel sounds and consonant sounds, and the combination of these sounds, and they can make the pronunciation of Chinese characters by Romanized letters. So you can see that this one is a vowel sound, and then this part is consonant sound. Yeah, you see that this one is too. And then in the help of the scholars of very talented about sound, especially the help of Lazzaro Cattaneo, the Jesuit divined the system for identifying the different tones. Because Chinese has so many tones that for the Jesuit, it's not easy to understand the kind of various tones. So this book, this 悉如而目字, this book also influenced to even the Chinese traditional scholars to study their phonetics. And then after these Jesuits relied on the techniques of kind of phonetics, they tried to explain the Chinese text or Chinese language by the grammatical way. So about 1682, Francisco Varro is also Jesuit. He made a book. And then that book is a grammatical way to explain Chinese language and characters. So before that, the Jesuits, at first they bewildered on finding out that Chinese had neither articles, nor cases, nor genders, or nor tenses, nor modes. But gradually, they came to know of Chinese grammar and made use of it to learn Chinese language. This is the end of my speech. When European culture encountered that of China in the 16th and 17th centuries, Jesuits were willing to accept the Chinese culture and tradition. So this book or this process can help us to comprehend Jesuit accommodative ideas of Chinese characters at a very early stage of their activity in China. Even though that kind of misunderstanding or nonsense when they study Chinese characters, but I suppose it is worth noting that the years spent by Jesuits on their Chinese studies with a tangible sense of admiration for the complexity of Chinese language and thought. With the help of their effort, we can now understand the beginning phase or beginning stage of interaction between Eastern and Western civilization. So this is my presentation. This is it. Thank you for your patience.